The Coach Kevin McMillan Show is brought to you by BSN Sports.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Coach Kevin McMillan Show. I'm Chris Brinkley. Coach, filming this one after Christmas. How was your Christmas?
It was good. Got to stay here in Martin with the family, which was nice. But the challenge for our family is that Paige's birthday is today, the day after Christmas. Yeah. So it's kind of a hectic 2 days for us.
So unlike Thanksgiving, you weren't searching for a restaurant on the day of?
No, we weren't driving around looking for a restaurant. Well, actually, on Christmas Eve we were trying to get somewhere to eat, just to go out, and didn't see much open. And I think yesterday, I saw open the Chinese restaurant. It made me think of A Christmas Story.
The Dragon Buffet. And I saw A Christmas Story yesterday.
And I thought, you know, I might want to do that just for the Christmas Story tradition, that we didn't do it. And we've had a big time, and hope everybody.
Days ago, before the Christmas holiday, you went to Southern Illinois. You win that game 85-55, and the stat that stands out, and it did almost immediately, was that your team forced 36 turnovers. And I know under your direction, a team at UT Martin has not done that, and we'd have to go into the history books to see how long it's been since that happened.
Well, it was a little bit of a perfect storm for them. Their point guard and their backup guard were out, which was going to create some challenges. And then we had just picked up in the Illinois game, which was 2 days before, that we felt like we could press. So it wasn't like they had seen it on film. It wasn't like they could prepare. Their guards were out. So it really kind of was a perfect storm. I don't think we'll force that many very often, but I do think the effort from our kids was a lot better. And maybe we can do some things press-wise and trapping-wise that'll hurt some people later on in the season.
Because it certainly was different, and you didn't put on the press until after the first media timeout, and then you just kind of turned the game around early from there.
Well, we like to do it at certain spots, but once you get something that bothers them, we're going to try to stick with it. And after that first media timeout, we got some steals and a bucket or two, and just kind of stayed with it. And it really didn't matter who was in there early. It caused some problems, but then they kind of got comfortable with it, and we had to make a few adjustments. But that's what Coach Russell's so good at, is handling the press and figuring out how to deal with things that'll cause some teams some problems. And very, very glad that we're able to use it, and hopefully we can use it more.
Coach, on our radio broadcast, not only did you force 36 turnovers, but there were a ton of deflections, and I'm sure you keep that statistically. But in one series, I think Asia Jones might have had 3 deflections back to back to back.
Well, she was the one I was talking about that early on had a deflection, a steal, a bucket, and then got in foul trouble and had to come out. And when she came out, that kind of changed the way that the press was going, and it really looked good with her up front. And that's something that you definitely will see us try to do more often. But she really had a really good game. I ended up with 17 points and led us in scoring, and had 5 steals. And you know, you'd like for her rebound numbers to be up a little bit, but a lot of that was that she sat so many minutes. She only played 20 minutes. So if she can do some damage up front, we'll probably be pressing more.
And you know, Coach, she's one of those special players. It's her freshman year, and it's a lot different than high school at this level, but she seems to be progressing rather rapidly. I know you see it more slowly in practice and with her even in the preseason, but from a statistical standpoint, she's getting better every game.
Well, one of the things that I measure kids by, it's real funny. We were talking on the bus coming home about, you can tell when kids have kind of bought into your program by a few different stats. And one of them is you can take assists to turnovers, and you can kind of see where if kids have really bought into what you're trying to do. And the other really strange stat is free throw percentage. And I've never understood that, but Rakisha last year was maybe the best example I've ever had. She finally came to me one day at practice and said, I want to shoot free throws better, and we walked down there on the floor, and she finished the season like 26 for 27, and that's when she went on that unbelievable run that pushed us into the NCAA tournament. And Asia's another one that was struggling from the free throw line, and I think she's shot about 80-something% since she's kind of tweaked it a little bit and bought into what we're trying to do, and she was 7 for 8 in the game. So it's good to see little things start showing up on a stat sheet that show you that the kids are buying in.
I'm curious. I've always thought it was interesting for broadcasters and the average sports fan. When we hold a box score, I think we see it differently than a coach does. If I were to hand you a random box score, what would be some of the first things you would look at to get a feel for what happened in that game?
Probably. It's probably not going to be that much different from what you would do. First thing I'm going to do is look at scoring, and I want to see how balanced we were. I don't really care if there's a 48 and then 4 twos. I'd rather see how many you had in double figures. I'm going to check rebounding, and I'm going to check assists and turnovers, and just to see if those numbers line up with what they should be. And then we'll check percentages, free throw percentage, and usually we check how many times we got to the line, just to see if we were being aggressive.
You know, I always like to look at the field goals made and how many assists you had. It's a lot different, it seems to me, in the women's game than it is in the men's game.
Well, you look, how much sharing the ball is going on, how much your offense is based on one-on-one play versus movement. I mean, there are a lot of things that go into that, and you know, I would ideally, you know, we had 28 field goals in the game. You'd like 28 assists,
right?
If they could go together. But you know, if you get an offense rebound, stick it back in. There's no assist for that. If there's a steal and you run down and shoot a layup, there's no assist for that. Out of bounds plays, I guess though you could get an assist for that one. But you know, by and large, it's a lot harder to get an assist on a bucket than it is not. And but you do like to see large numbers of assists.
Prior to the Southern Illinois game, Coach, you played at Illinois and at Ohio State. We haven't really talked about those games. Shooting percentages weren't very good in either one of those games.
No, both games were, and I guess you think with as many teams that we've played from the BCS conferences that there would not have to be much of an adjustment, but it seems when we play them that there's always a little adjustment somewhere in the game where we have to figure out the speed or the size or whatever, and both of those games we started out very, very slowly. Then when we kind of got our legs under us, so to speak, you know, they were 4 and 6 point games in the second half, and to start the game, and then 2, once you've got it close, you've expended all that energy, you've got to figure out a way to take it to that next step, which you know we couldn't do in either one of those games. But there were some things in both those games that showed up that were extremely impressive, and they're backwards. The Ohio State game, I think Butler and Newsom were 6 for 34 from the field. Asia was 0 for 5 from layup range. And then they usually make 3 threes a game. They made 8 and had one girl who's made 5 threes on the year go 5 for 5. And all of those crazy things happen, and we get beat 20. And you would think Butler and Newsom go 6 for 34. We miss 5 layups, and they hit over 150% from the 3-point line based on what they usually do. You're going to get beat 50. Well, no, we're going to get beat 20, which shows you, I mean, a 20-point loss is not good, but it shows you we can play poorly, and we're still in a basketball game.
And that's the key to a pretty good team.
And that's showing me progression from 3 years ago. When if we shoot like that 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, or last year, it's a 4. So we're making strides, but what you don't like to see is that you want all that stuff to come together. In the Illinois game, Butler and Newsom don't have that bad game, and instead of the others picking up where they left off in Ohio State, they kind of dropped a little bit. So it's making everybody figure out that they all need to be playing at the same time. That seems to be the challenge.
Interestingly enough, after talking to you after Illinois game, I didn't know where you would be, but you were pretty positive because even though you lost that game, you learned a lot about your team in that game.
Well, we talked about it at Southern Illinois that we came out of the Illinois game having, and I gave this analogy after the game to the girls, a basketball season and a team is like 10 puzzles laid out in front of you. And what we have to do as coaches is figure out which puzzle best fits this team. Well, after the Illinois game, we figured out which was our puzzle. And there were probably about 5 puzzles that we didn't know how they were going to go. Well, we figured out which puzzle was our puzzle. Well, now that we've got all those other puzzles out of the way, we've got one puzzle, but now you got pieces everywhere. So now we get all the pieces where they're supposed to be, and once we get all those where they're supposed to be, then you can start playing good basketball. And so we're very excited coming out of that Illinois game that we feel like we know what we need to do to be the best team that we can be. And so now it's a matter of fitting everybody in to make sure that it clicks. But a little adjustment could mean a big difference in your season. And so what we think we've figured out what's going to make this team tick as the rest of the season wears on.
That's interesting because at the end of the year, I always like to go back and say what was the most important game of the year, and it could be that one.
Right, yeah, definitely.
And it was a loss.
Right now it was Illinois, and there's no question that it was Illinois. And it may change as the season wears on, and there may be another one that's even more important than this one. But right now, I can't think of a more important thing than us getting the right puzzle together. because you just don't know. When freshmen come in, you're not sure what they can do. You're not sure how much you can depend on them, which ones can do this, which ones can do that, and it usually takes us a little while to figure it out. And that's the bad thing for Butler and Newsom is every year, except one, they've basically started 2 or 3 freshmen that it took us till Christmas to figure out what to do, and then after that we could take off. The year that we didn't, of course, was their second year when they made that great run in the OVC regular season.
Okay, we'll take a break. Florida State coming up on the schedule, plus Jacksonville State as UT Martin opens the Ohio Valley Conference season. Coach Kevin McMillan Show continues in just a moment.
At this time, we would like to thank our basketball corporate donors: Parker Hannafin, State Farm, Surgical Associates of Martin, Vans Institutional Pharmacy, Walmart, DYNAMIX, CARY Insurance.
Back on the Coach Kevin McMillan Show. Coach, one more game before you start conference play. You go to Florida State on Saturday. Another tough team, another tough place to play.
Well, it's a top 25 program to end our non-conference schedule. Huge challenge, but the most important part of this trip is not the top 25 teams. It's Jacksonville State sitting on the back end because we do start conference play. And Jacksonville State had Ole Miss down 11 about a week ago at half. So new coach down there, and they're playing really hard. So it'll be a challenge to open on the road. But there's just 4 more games left of this road swing, and then we'll be back at home. But this is a big one with Florida State and Jacksonville State.
Yeah, what is it, 10 games on the road, and that's the Illinois State game being canceled?
Right, yeah, so it's only 10. So, what are we whining about? It could have been 11.
As a broadcaster, you go places, and they go, are they renovating your gym? Why aren't you playing any home games?
I've had a bunch of people ask me, were they having did rodeo have to move into the Elam Center, or was there a swim meet going on and they had to move something, or was there tennis or something? And because we have been out for a long time.
I call something like this a gut check. You really see what your team's made of when you do this.
You do, and I hope you'd love to get 2 more wins out of it, but usually you get to the end of the season and you look back and you can see what was important for your team. And if we could have snuck out a game or 2 more, I'd probably call this road swing, a pivotal point. But you never know. Like we talked about, Illinois right now is the kind of the turning point for us, and hopefully we'll make strides with Florida State and then Jacksonville State, and then we can take care of Murray and P and then start back on a home stretch.
Jacksonville State will be the opponent Monday. That's actually a doubleheader with the men's team. We've not talked a whole lot about the Ohio Valley Conference this year. How do you and I know it's early and you've not been focused that much on it, but how do you see it shaping out maybe?
It is very early. Teams have had some kids hurt, and so you really don't know how, because I really haven't paid attention to them. Mm-hmm. I think Murray has had a very good pre-conference season. Eastern Kentucky's been real strong. Tech and Belmont have been a little down, but they've played tough schedules, and I think it's a figuring out how to play with their new group. I can go on and on. SEMO's has some up and down games where they've looked really good, and then Ty probably wasn't really happy with them after a couple of games. So it is very early. After probably the first 2 weeks of the season, you're going to get a real good sense of if anybody has made some strides that you didn't expect. You just don't know. It's so early, and our conference, though, at one time we were in the top 15 after about 3 weeks of the season. But I think we've settled back into a pretty high number, which means you're going to have to do something amazing to get out of a 16 seed in the tournament.
And I always think it's interesting. You play some really good teams as a mid-major, and you play up, and all the conference teams do that, and you play some teams that may not be as good as you are. But once you get to the conference season, those games are different. They're usually battles, and it's very difficult to win on the road anywhere.
Well, once you get in conference, everybody's seen you play, and we're at a huge disadvantage because Butler and Newsom and Megan White, our 3 seniors, as strong as they are and as good as they are. Well, these teams have had 3 years to figure out what to do with them, so they're coming in with a 4th shot. Well, think about it. If you play somebody once or twice in a season, or 7 or 8 times, you're going to get better at dealing with them the more often you play them. So I don't know what's in store for this bunch this year. And once you do get into conference play, they're going to know you really, really, really well. They're gonna have seen every game that you've played for 15 or 20 games, and so it just gets so play. And road wins are hard to come by. You know, I think the old adage was if you win all your home games and split on the road, you're probably going to win the conference, and it's pretty close. And I think that we start off with 3 straight road games to start it, and for a young bunch, that's a challenge that you wish you didn't have, but hopefully that 10-game, that's where we're going to reap some benefits from our 10-game crazy schedule.
When you were an assistant coach and you were the scout of a certain game, would you rather scout a conference game or a game where it was a team you weren't very familiar with?
I don't know that it really mattered. You were just as nervous no matter which one, because you knew a little more was on your shoulders for that game. Did I miss a out of bounds play, or did a player could they do something I didn't see? So I don't think that really mattered. I did like late in the season. I liked playing the conference teams because I didn't have to do as much work. Because you were tired at the end of the season and you knew everything they could do. And but I also liked for the NCAA tournament scouting teams that you'd never seen before, because it was kind of something new and exciting.
Can you give us the last question? On average, most assistant coaches in the country, when they scout a game, how long does it take to prepare that scouting report?
That's going to be dependent on the head coach and what they ask of their assistants. It could be anywhere from probably 4 or 5 hours to probably 10 or 15 hours. It just depends on how many games that coach wants them to watch, or how far back they go, or how comfortable you are with them. The way I've always done it is I'll watch enough film until I feel like I can start predicting what they're going to do. And if I can start predicting what they're going to do, I don't want to watch anymore, because after a point, there's so much that you can watch and see and get that it'll start jumbling everything up. And so that's what I do, and I think that's kind of what my assistants do. They watch 2 or 3 games, and when they start getting comfortable, they'll cut it at that.
What has to be frustrating is that recently I went to grad school. You worked on a project for 20 hours, you turned it in, and you got a grade. You could have the greatest scouting report ever and still lose a game.
We have preached to the kids that we can come up with the best scouting report, the best game plan, have the best offense, and we can still lose a basketball game. The flip of that is we could have the worst scouting report, run the worst offenses, and have all the worst plans and calls that were done, and our girls, can still go out and win a game. So there's not near as much. Coaching is not as big a deal. It's bigger and it's smaller than people really realize. Usually it's kind of flipped. You think coaches do, in-game adjustments are huge. Well, they kind of are, but if your kids are taking care of business, you can make all the wrong moves and they can still take care of you. And you can do all the right things in practice and do all the right drills and say all the right things, and if the kids don't go out there on the floor and do it, it doesn't really matter. So, a lot is on their shoulders, and but there's a balance that you try to find where they get comfortable with what you're telling them, and you're comfortable with what they're doing on the floor, and that's kind of the putting the pieces to the puzzle together and making it work.
And if they trust you and feel like they have an advantage based on your scouting report, that has to be big.
Yeah, and having been through that's why your seniors get to where they trust you, because they've been through so many games with you that they know this is what we're going to try to accomplish, and this is what coach is looking for, and this is what happens when we do things a certain way. And you hope that your young ones pick up on that quickly. We typically have picked up well in January and February, and you wish we picked up well in November, December, January, February, March. So, but it's a challenge for each team to try to find their own way.
I'll say thanks for watching, Coach. We're getting nice compliments on the show. You're doing a good job.
Well, I don't know. Some people that watch the show, hopefully you're smarter than we are.
We'll be back next week. We'll talk about the Florida State game and the Jacksonville State game. I'm Chris Brinkley with Coach Kevin McMillan on the Coach Kevin McMillan Show.
The Coach Kevin McMillan Show is brought to you by BSN Sports. Thank you for your support of UT Martin basketball.